Now, from that political development in Rivers State, let's turn attention to our focus today on the program. We are turning attention to women inclusivity in the global and local sphere. Every year between the 25th of November and 10th of December, the world celebrates 16 days of activism against gender-based violence. And the theme for the commemoration this year is Unite to End Digital Violence against all women and girls. Now, some statistics here. 1 in 3 women experience gender-based violence in their lifetime. 16 to 58% of women and girls face digital violence, and 90 to 95% of deepfake videos are sexual images of women. This is a real call, and activists, campaigners are joining the call even to drive support for women and to end gender-based violence against all women and girls the world over. Tonight, I will have 2 women who are at the forefront of this conversation join me as we explore this issue. One is Professor Joy Ezelo. She's a senior advocate of Nigeria. She's also, has the award of Officer Order of the Niger, and she is the United Nations Independent Commissioner, as well as founder of Women's Aid Collective. Also joining me will be Fatima Mohammed, who is convener Women for Good Governance. We'll take a break now, and when we return, we'll have that conversation. Stay with us, everyone. This is Beyond the Headlines, and we are shining a spotlight on the 16 days of activism, which began 25th of November. My guests, I understand they both now are part of the program. I have Fatima Mohammed, who is convener Women for Good, and I also have a senior advocate of Nigeria and United Nations Independent Commissioner and founder Women's Aid Collective, WACO, Professor Joy Ezelo. Thank you so much for joining us. Let's begin with you, Prof. Let's begin with an X-ray of the theme for this year. It is Unite to End Digital Violence Against All Women and Girls. Talk to us about the significance of that theme in 2025.
Yes, it's very important. We know that 25th of November every year has long been marked by United Nations as a day for elimination of all forms of violence against women. And from there, it gathered momentum and led to the global 16 days of activism. And this year's, every year a team is chosen. And this year's team is so apt because digital violence, there has been a spike in digital violence against women. And this is often not recognized. And when you look at laws and laws of many countries, especially in Africa, they hardly take that into account because digital violence committed through the medium of computer, internet, cyberspace, which is like cyber crime, cyber stalking, often in drafting of laws, and think of those penal laws that some of them are very old. They didn't envisage this world of new technologies and what new technologies can be deployed. It is very good. At the same time, it can be used to commit a lot of crime. I personally, I was special rapporteur on trafficking in persons, especially women and children, globally. So I knew how new technologies have been deployed in trafficking people. So when you think of digital violence, you think that it can also, even rape can be committed. Even think of pornography. People are even, there are young people who have committed suicide because someone had made them to show themselves in an indecent manner, and they have uploaded that, and the whole world have seen it, and many young people have committed suicide, and some have been tricked. And this doesn't just affect women, it also affects men, even young boys. So that's why the team is important. And for us also, just building on that team, we've organized a lot of commemorative activities, including looking at, we had art competition, both for tertiary category, for secondary high school category, and the team is through the eyes of the victim and survivor of gender-based violence. We've also apart from the art competition, mobilize communities, especially the traditional and religious leaders, towards prevention of gender-based violence. Because
Indeed,
prevention,
Prof.
as the clinic goes, is better than cure. So
Yes,
this is a
prevention
time
is
to
key.
unite and
Indeed.
say no.
Yes, indeed. Prevention is key. And of course, these religious and traditional rulers have great influence on the communities. And we do hope that they are able to pass the message down. But bringing in Fatima Mohammed at this time now. Now, this commemoration, the campaign was created since 1991. That's about 34 years running now. How do you think we're faring as a people globally, and of course Nigeria specifically now, in this campaign to end, all forms of attack, as it is, on women in the space of gender-based violence, and considering especially that statistic that we have that about 16 to 58% of women and girls actually face digital violence today.
True.
Fatima Mohammed. All right, it appears this. Okay, are you able to speak now? All right, we'll get back to Fatima Mohammed in a moment. Coming back to you, Prof. Yes, would attend to that question later. But then, this year it's marking the 30th anniversary of the Beijing Declaration and Platform for Action. You have worked closely, as a rapporteur, on these issues that have to do with trafficking in persons. On women's rights and all of that. So what do you think at this point, needs to be done to actually help the situation to protect the women's and girls' rights? Prof, please.
A lot, because if you look at those 12 critical areas of concern that were identified during the Beijing conference, you will see that all of that we have not excelled. We cannot say we have achieved even 70% in any of them. So because it talks about violence against women, it still remains the most surreptitious forms of violence against women. The issue of poverty, the most surreptitious form of violation of women's rights. The issue of poverty, the issue of economy, the political participation, the women and media. If you look at all of those areas, we haven't achieved gender equality as envisaged. And if you're looking at women's human rights, huge violation. It's still out there. It takes actually 10 lives, as I've conceptualized it before, to survive womanhood, from cradle to grave. It follows discrimination, sex stereotype, and then the gender-based violence. So harmful widowhood practices is very rife, physical abuse very rife, economic deprivation, including denial of inheritance right, digital violence cases like we mentioned, even this year in WACO that provides free legal aid to women and young people in especially difficult situations, including persons with disability. We have dealt with, between November last year and this year, if you look at the number of cases, over 1,000 cases handled, you can see the breakdown. I don't know whether we didn't get the video of this, but we had, like, for physical abuse, we had about 436 reports. And for harmful widowhood practices, we had 180 cases. Sexual offenses, we had over 50 cases. And then if you look at digital violence, we had about 5 cases of digital violence. So looking at this vicious cycle of abuse, and then how women have been denied what's supposed to be their human rights. You remember, Beijing was an affirmation, but it reaffirmed and re-echoed the fact that human rights are women's rights, and women's rights are human rights. And these rights are recognized both in the Constitution of the Federal Republic of Nigeria, recognized in the international laws, legal framework, like done at the level of United Nations, recognized also at the level of the African Union in terms of the African Charter on Human and People's Rights, and then also the African Charter on Human and People's Rights Protocol on the rights of women in Africa. Which Nigeria reports regularly to. Nigeria has ratified all the core human rights. The problem is implementation.
Implementation.
So what we see is low accountability,
Prof,
low procedure.
Yes, Prof. I'm glad.
Yes.
I'm glad you've gotten to this point of implementation. We'll get to talk about the legal aspect to all this, because I'm also curious, why are we unable to make so much progress? Is it that we are leaving behind some critical stakeholders who are or should be instrumental to the success story? For instance, how do we incorporate men and boys to support the campaign such that we're able to make a headway?
Yeah, it's very good, really, to build that positive masculinity, to catch them young and to make sure that men and boys are part of this discussion, because we cannot make the progress that is sustainable without involvement of men and boys. For me, I've done this work for over 3 decades, and I recognize this early enough. And now I'm glad that most people are recognizing it, that do for boys in school at all levels, get them to understand what is gender, what is all gender bias, all of those concepts, basic concepts, what it means, what does it mean to be a man? Is to be a man, means that you have power over everybody. What does it mean, when you're being a woman? What are the differences apart from biological differences? They have to understand that the dignity, right, everybody, every human being is equal in worth with regard to dignity, right, and freedom. And we have to take it more also to traditional system, because some of them are so hard to change, and religious tenets, but we are glad that they are coming along. We've had the traditional rulers who are making bylaws now, who have abolished some of the harmful practices. And by the way, something like denial of inheritance right, the Supreme Court has already pronounced on it that is unconstitutional. And in my part of the world, or part of Nigeria, where this is very, very prevalent, like denial of inheritance right, widowhood practices, we use that Supreme Court decision to say that these traditional rulers, you cannot use customary or cultural norms anymore, because the Supreme Court has already pronounced on this. And this
what has their response been?
Current jurisprudence.
Okay, so what responses have you been getting from them?
But they said they don't know about the law, about the decision. So when we quote Mojeku and Mojeku, and then on which and all of those, and we said no, ignorance of the law is not an excuse. But of course, we know that it's not an excuse, but we are now telling you that this is the law of the land, and we expect you to comply. And we also expect you to comply with international obligations of Nigeria, because Nigeria have ratified CEDAW, because Nigeria has ratified the protocol to the African Charter on the Rights of Women and women in Africa. So you are part of the system, and you're supposed to implement those laws. But also coming home, look at frontline, look at the justice ecosystem, for example. Look at those who are in the front line of administration of justice. Look at prosecutors, police, for example, the judges, magistrates. Have they been? So we need to also build capacity so that people appreciate this law and implement it, especially for investigators. How do they do investigation on gender-based violence? Do they just trivialize it? If a woman turns up to police station to report that she's battered, and they will laugh and then just make joke and say, "What did you do? Did you cook for him, or you didn't give him the other thing, or are you performing your work?" They just trivialize and laugh over this, and will not take any action. And the next, the woman may die in silence. So it is important that we have a responsive system where people can even dial hotline and get to the police and report that they are in a domestic violence situation.
And Prof, that is one layer. There is another layer where the person even speaks up, and maybe it's their family who are now trying to die the whole matter. Maybe they just don't want to push ahead for whatever reason, maybe influence of the perpetrator, or whatever other reasons. There is another point I want us to look at, and that is the social media. One of the images we're using on this program is talking about the fact that it is one's rights and one's duty actually to set barrier for oneself online. At this time when, social media is like a free place. Anybody can be there, and just about anything can flash through while you are there. How can the providers, how can the big tech companies also be held liable? How can they be made to follow to ensure that young people or vulnerable individuals are not exposed to some of these messages or words that could actually be harmful to them or further make them vulnerable?
Yeah, there is a lot going out there, and there is the dark web. And we know that before, people are not educated enough, even when they think they know, they can easily fall prey to many people manipulating. You can see like a harmless admiration. Oh, I like your post. And then from there, it can lead to other things. We have seen even in Nigeria, because let us not be imagining that this thing happened only in advanced countries, or in the Western world, so to speak. We have seen people who have taken offer from Facebook who have been murdered. You remember the case that happened in Nigeria. So we know these things happen. And for their liability in terms of this, they also, you have to read some of the small letters and see that, because I engage with many of them as the special rapporteur on trafficking, and to also make sure that those supply chains and those providers, they do not become a conduit for people to exploit and then to digitally, otherwise, even leading to death of some people. So you will see some of them will say, look, they are doing.
Well, that's been a Professor Joy Ezilo, and it just appears, there is some challenge with the network from her. And unfortunately, Fatima Mohammed couldn't be a part of this. But then Professor Ezilo has spoken extensively. Yeah, Prof, I understand you're back.
Yes, I think in the network, just where we are.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Anyway, thank you so much for the opportunity. I think we have to do a lot. You see, when people are talking about even addiction to TikTok, to some of this, and exposure of children. I've had someone say the child of 8 years, 9 came back home and asked the parents, what is porno? Because people in my school are watching this in the library. So you can imagine. So we have a long way to protect children from this type of thing. We've seen children, like I mentioned before, commit suicide because so there is liability. But then for you to hold them vicariously liable, there are also conditions for you because you freely sign up to this. You're not, and so it's all regulated. So it depends on case by case basis. But I agree that they should do more, and they are doing. I know many big ones, I don't want to mention names, are taking action and are doing really well. And I know some of them that have even contacted me, then as my capacity, and what can they do to ensure that the cyberspace is safer for people and is not used for trafficking. So we've had all of this conversation. But for Nigeria, we have the cybercrime laws, of course, but implementation is always the big elephant in the room.
And on implementation, Prof. Yes, I was going to share, about what is happening in some parts of the world. For instance, Australia is set to implement the social media ban on the 10th of December when the 16 days, would be wrapping up. And it would be restricting all users under the age of 16 from holding accounts on major platforms. You talk about TikTok, Snapchat, YouTube, Reddit, and Instagram, and the rest of them. And as the first country to actually adopt such comprehensive age restrictions for social media, the result of the ban is being closely watched by government worldwide. Do you suppose that Nigeria should also take a cue from this and perhaps take this step as well?
Not yet, because we don't want, we have a propensity, even for the government, state actors, to abuse this process and infringe on individual rights. As a human rights defender, as an activist of over 3 decades, as one who have seen military rule, as one who have also seen that we are very, state, we have, in quote and on paper, state police, we have police too much already, but without even, we still have the insecurity, but policing in the wrong ways. So we don't want to give them this liberty to do this because it's going to infringe on a lot of people's rights. But yet, for young ones, I agree. For under 16, yes, we need action.
Right. So, Prof believes that even though we might not implement this in Nigeria already, but people under 16 years of age should not be allowed to run these accounts. Professor Joy Ezelo, thank you very much for your time on the program today. Well, that's our show. We thank you very much for watching. A repeat broadcast would air at midnight and at 6 a.m. I am Abosadi Adeni Adremi. Enjoy your weekend.